Hello and welcome to the Uprising Show. And today we are going to discuss a very, very interesting topic to me, XR and AI in healthcare world. And I've got a great expert who's not only just the expert on, the non-clinical side, but also clinical side, Dr. Joe Morgan. Welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me.
Dr. Morgan, a brief introduction of you for our listeners, what you do.
Sure. So I am a physician, anesthesiologist by training, and I founded a company called Waya Health in 2016. And we build solutions that assess, treat, and deliver care to patients using extended reality.
It is quite a combination. We'll talk about that. Before going into the business side, let's go back in time. Where were you born and raised? Did you always wanted to be a doctor? Was either of your parents a doctor?
Yeah. So I was born in a small suburb of a city called Binghamton, New York, called Conklin, New York. No, I was not. My father was a janitor at a local university, and my mother was a medical technologist at a local hospital. And it was my brother, who's about 2 years my senior, myself, my mom and dad in a lower middle class neighborhood in upstate New York. And yeah, that was the upbringing.
And when you were like, I want to go and become a doctor, when that happened?
Yeah, so I always had a aptitude in science and math, and really, particularly within science, I would probably say my strongest aptitude had always been biology. Um, and I ended up going to Clemson University for undergrad. I actually built and sold computers for money in high school, and that I'd always had a strong interest in technology. And so I started at Clemson under, I think it was computer and electrical engineering for the first couple of years. Had all the sort of prereqs out of the way for medical school. And about halfway through school at Clemson, I switched over into finance, really because I wanted to, I think, probably make my life a little bit easier. Some youthful foolishness on my part, certainly. And got a job in finance and absolutely hated it. It lasted about 6 months, left that job, traveled across country, lived out of my car really for 3 or 4 months, saw friends, saw the national parks. It was a real eye opener and sort of transition period for me. I think it was at that time I decided really that I really wanted to go to medical school. And I think, there may have been a subtext for that, or sort of, I guess, a bias towards that from the beginning. And so anyway, it was too late in the cycle to apply for the upcoming fall. So there was essentially another year gap. And during that time, I went to University of Buffalo, got another undergraduate degree in chemistry, and met my wife. And then after that, I went to medical school.
Wow. Fascinating. It took you a little bit there to get to where you wanted to be.
That's right.
Interesting question I have is always, I wonder, especially when parents are more from service class and you are the kind of person who's either picking up trades or even entrepreneurship, there is always a little bit of unlearning in the mind that you have to do so that you are able to take those risks. And, because of your upbringing and experiences, that's where you're born and brought up. Was there that kind of transition you had to also do, especially when you jumped into entrepreneurship?
Yeah, well, I think there's both sides of the coin there. I think that there are skill sets or just, cultural exposures, if you will, from, I guess a lower socioeconomic background that, I would say there's a lot of street smarts there. But then there's also, I agree, there's a different risk tolerance. And, so I would really answer your question by saying that I think that there's probably a different tolerance for risk, because when you work hard for something, you don't want to lose it. But at the same time, I think that kind of ends up coming out in the wash, because I think, the street smarts are there, and really, really growing up where I did, it was a real blessing, because, Binghamton, New York, when I was born in the 80s, was one of the best places to live in the United States. It was the birthplace of IBM. And when I was a child, IBM left. I think the business environment was too expensive, and a lot of those offices and so forth went to Raleigh, North Carolina. And with it was a nosedive for the local, economy. And so, by the time I was an adolescent, the city of Binghamton was rough, very rough. And so it was really a dense urban environment surrounded by a very thin rim of suburbs, followed by, country. And so really within 15, 20 miles, you really got exposed to the entire cross section, really, of America in some way. And so I think that was a real blessing, and really probably gave me some skills that really allow me to hopefully relate to most anyone.
Yeah. And of course, the support from parents, that
Yes.
always helps us. They get the less credit, but, shout out to parents here.
Oh, yeah.
Making you feel that you can continue to do what you want to do.
Yes, absolutely. I mean, just to add on to that, I think that is probably the biggest factor, is, looking back, we were lower middle class, but it didn't feel that way, at all. And very lucky to have, two parents that cared very much. And, that I think is a real blessing for anyone.
Yeah. All right. Now, fast forward to your current venture. So your journey from obviously medicine to founding Waya Health is fascinating. It really happens. Like, physicians go in and build the companies. So what was the moment or insight that led to the creation of Waya Health for you? And also give us a little bit more insight into what specific problems does Waya solve today, and how do you approach it, differently from what exists in the market today?
Yeah. So I think my first sort of real dive into healthcare innovation started when I was a resident at the Cleveland Clinic in Ohio. I had developed some IP for collecting and destroying controlled substance waste, in collaboration with a couple of folks there and the Cleveland Clinic Innovations. And I really loved the process. And that, combined with, I had been doing some consulting work in wearable devices and physiologic tracking. And so that was a real sort of natural fit for me with my clinical specialty, my sort of background knowledge. And that spilled over into after I had finished residency. And then I got my first real paycheck and bought a virtual reality headset for fun, really. It had nothing to do with any desire to start a business or any of that. And then after using it for a couple months, I distinctly remember when it happened. There was really two epiphanies. This was the first, where I was drenched in sweat after playing one of the initial sort of cohort of games that came out for virtual reality after like 8 minutes. And I'm somebody who grew up playing competitive soccer. I played basketball. My workout was really team sports. So, and I'm not going to run on a treadmill. I'll do it for a couple minutes and be like, this is stupid. I'll just stop, it's just, I was a center mid in soccer, which is, ostensibly requires a lot of fitness. And so at one point I was very fit, and kind of also knew that I needed to do something to start to get fit. And that was a real epiphany, because that, combined with my background knowledge in wearable devices and physiologic tracking, really there was this huge engagement problem. People would wear their Fitbit for, 3 or 4 weeks, boom, it goes in the sock drawer, and then it never comes out, and hence you don't get the benefits, in terms of data or health improvements. And so I really, the first epiphany was, this is incredibly engaging, even to the point where I'm doing something I normally don't want to do myself, right? And I knew that this problem was very prevalent amongst everyone. So that led to a deep dive into that subject matter. And it was quickly apparent that there was already 3 decades of research within extended reality for use in various different healthcare contexts. And so basically that was the genesis of what is today Waya Health. And the second epiphany was really within the next year or so. I distinctly remember, I could tell you exactly where I was. I was driving, and, I felt like my plate was a little bit full, because, practicing as an anesthesiologist and doing this simultaneously, but I was extremely happy. And that was the epiphany that, this is my jam, that, if I do this, a little clinical work, and spend time with my family, really, that's what I'd like to be my life's work. And I really haven't deviated from that mindset for 10 years now. So that's a good way to look at it. And honestly, it's simple in terms of how I approach it,
Yeah. And what specific problem does Waya solve today?
Yeah. So we solve a variety of problems. We're really, that initial foray into the literature of virtual reality, that was not just a sort of, oh, look, there's a lot of information here. That actually extended out for about 1.5 2 years. And, over the course of that period, certainly we had myself, our co-founder, Rahul Patel, who's an emergency medicine physician. We also had another person who joined us early, who was an internal medicine physician, Nunzio Pagano, Leon Huddleston, who is a physical medicine rehab physician, also an attorney by training. So he's like one of these guys who's just amazing. And then other people joined in, and we were, taking a very deep dive into the available literature. And what we were trying to do is extract from that the sort of first principles of extended reality for healthcare. Basically, what are the core constructs that are somewhat unique to extended reality that can, fill in gaps and solve problems within healthcare, with, engagement being the first one that I already mentioned. But there's a whole variety of other things, like, for example, distraction and its propensity to reduce perceived pain, or relaxation and its propensity to mitigate anxiety, and so on. And so what we did was, that went on for about 1.5 2 years. We pulled all those sort of tidbits together, and we made a roadmap. And, we've been very lucky that we haven't had to deviate from that roadmap. And so, today we're in a position where we've built the system that is able to address a myriad of different issues, whether it's assessing or treating them, as well as delivering care over the medium of extended reality, whether it's augmented reality, virtual reality, or even, immersive 2D media. And so that is essentially where we are today. So it's not one issue, but there are, within that sort of scope, there are a whole variety of particular issues where there's really a profound movement of the needle in the right direction. I'll give one example. I know we can move on, but opioid use. So it turns out that in the context of minor medical procedures, or just medical procedures and surgeries in general, there are a variety of surgeries that are really minor in nature, that have patients that later go on to become persistent opioid users. And so one prototypical example is the carpal tunnel surgery. Believe it or not, 7% that go into carpal tunnel who are opioid naive, meaning that they have not been exposed to an opioid in the past 90 days, later go on to become a persistent opioid user. So that's over 1 in 20, right? And so, one of the implementations we've been very proud of that we've had in play for approaching 4 years now, 4 or 5 years, is our procedural implementation. So we're actually using virtual reality as a supplement to assist patients through minor surgeries and medical procedures, with the idea that we're hopefully mitigating the use of sedatives and narcotics. And so, we're leveraging the first principles construct in this case, amongst other constructs of distraction. So, that's one simple example, but, it's one simple example that's easily said. There's a lot of implementation details, a lot of technical details. But, if you do this 20 times, ostensibly you've prevented a case of persistent opioid use. And if you do it enough, it's not a tough extrapolation to say you've probably, sooner or later, you're going to prevent a death or morbidity relating from opioid use, simply because the patient never got into that situation to start.
Got it. And currently, who are your, whom do you sell to? What and how does it get into the patient's hands? I guess that's the most important question. Can you give us some insights on that?
Yes, absolutely. So we sell to other institutions. We're a B2B company primarily. We are interested in potentially a customer-facing, approachable solution, although our primary focus is B2B and has been since inception. And we sell to healthcare institutions, whether that's hospitals, physician-operated clinics. We've had conversations with insurance companies. So we're really interested in getting this into the hands of healthcare institutions so that they can get it into the hands of patients, really in any way that makes sense for them. And we make a conscious effort to facilitate that and really do what we can to make it work within any of our clients' particular business contexts.
Makes sense. Also, I think the way our health system is set up, it is the way to get to the patient's hand, because 95% of people still on insurances, or
Yes.
some way they want to get through that system. And somebody who's done multiple pivots in my careers between D2C and B2B and how to getting things, I can confirm that this is probably a better route at this moment, at least.
Yeah.
So, when Facebook and Meta now, when they announced Metaverse back a few years ago, I was obviously super excited. It's almost like, wow, this is possible. And I literally bought a domain then there. I was like, you know what? Not only the best way to learn is to just start building a place where everybody can learn. So I started creating this domain. I started posting new use cases every day. Started to do that. But I saw pretty quickly that hype was going down, in the opposite direction. And not only, I was losing interest, but also I was looking, the public sentiment was very negative for some reason. So then it went back up. Then we also saw Meta kind of started to their stock, and everybody started blaming them on their investment in Metaverse. And then their stock price is going down. Then Mark Zuckerberg decided to not include the word Metaverse in their calls anymore. And then they again start going back, but they were still working behind it. And it's kind of been a roller coaster, to say the least. Where do you see right now? What's the state or where it's heading? Is it the sentiment has turned positive yet? Net delta going up, or do you still feel like, it's still we are just still barely scratching the surface? And also, because you've been into the most impactful field of application of all these XR and AI together, what's kind of the biggest misconceptions that you see and you want to take opportunity to dismantle them today?
Yeah. So with regards to your first question, I think it's perfect that it follows the previous one, which is I think that the enterprise space is where the value is. If I had to, if I was some sort of market analyst, the value is very much in the enterprise space, and there's profound value. And I think that's frankly where the consumer-facing side maybe has missed the mark. And a little bit of this is the Silicon Valley business model, which is, you have to scale. And what is scale? Well, if they're trying to achieve 2D mobile scale with extended reality, I think it's going to be a long time before they're not woefully disappointed. I mean, but at the same time, they're missing the sort of real treasure here, which is its use within enterprise. I think it's a perfectly valid critique of extended reality that there are some antisocial elements about it, right? You have this thing on your face. It's not like people go walking down the street with a headset on their face. And really, that is extremely relevant in the consumer-facing business. However, it works perfectly within healthcare, which is a very intimate encounter. It's a very intimate customer experience, if you will, patient experience. And so I think that whether it's a challenge related to form factor, whether it's a challenge that's really sort of a marketing or branding thing, I think the overall point is that, the enterprise space, even when all of this went down several years ago, was already fine, with the caveat that it just needs to not be ignored. And I think there might be a little bit of an obsession with the B2C play and achieving some sort of Silicon Valley scale. I think it probably will anyway, eventually, but if the technology is not there yet in terms of the hardware, it's a little bit like jumping the gun to me. And I think those of us that are or were and are deeply involved in the extended reality for healthcare space, it was kind of an inside joke with the whole metaverse hype cycle, because we had already been in this space for a long time, and we we kind of were a little bit disappointed in that we saw, we knew that this plane wasn't going to fly forever in terms of the hype cycle, right? And so, occasionally, I think it's less now. I think the whole, we're kind of at that after the hype cycle where things kind of level out and people are a little bit more grounded, which, by the way, in AI, that's a different story right now, as we all know. I think, but then with regards to those of us that are inside the space, we kind of saw and were concerned about the inevitable crash of the hype cycle. But really, that was all related to consumer facing. And so I think that's the overarching point that's really important.
Yeah. I was going to say one thing, you said it right. Like, how we view business model is kind of a problem in direct to consumer side. And we did jump a gun there because the hardware wasn't really like,
right.
It needs to be like accessible and affordable both. And it only then things can fly. It's hard. DTC is hard. Otherwise, selling to consumer is hard. Which I feel like we are still going to see this battle, especially for companies who are trying to sell to consumer directly. Mm-hmm. I think I read it yesterday or today. Meta is still kind of make a statement that this is the decade where we kind of will know if we land on that side or this side of the island.
Yeah, I believe that that was Bosworth who said that.
Yeah,
in a leaked letter. Yeah, and I think he was actually referring to this year in particular, and that tells me there may be some forthcoming announcements. But it also tells me that there's probably some questioning or there's lack of complete confidence, right? Which, for us as a company, of course, market wins are something that are great to have at your back. But we've now been in around for 9 years. I've been in this space for 10, and it's, to me, it's kind of like there are many hurdles and challenges we've overcome as a company, and I don't really worry too much about it. I think, though, that for what it's worth, I do think that the long-term prospects of consumer-facing are extremely bright. And that's because when you start to really think about AI and its capabilities, and then you think about really the sort of increasing prevalence and omnipresence of data within our lives, ultimately, where you go is you need a higher bandwidth medium to go about things that use this technology compared to the screen that the 2D screen that we're using right now. And really, I think that extended reality is, for a variety of reasons, is that next natural step. And so when you start to combine these things, for example, we were putting computer vision models on headsets using the pass-through video feed in 2018, I think 2019 maybe. We started in 2018, it wasn't there. And then 2019, I think we got something running at, mind you, it was a black and white pass-through. And, we're running it at, if we're lucky, 12 frames per second. So nothing production ready, but we're very aware, and we've been building these things for a long time now. And, my sincere hope is that when this sort of mergence between the AI and XR happens, which I think will be this year, there's a lot of discussion surrounding Android XR and then putting Gemini on it. I have some deep-seated concerns about gating of these things. In other words, if I have a headset, I should be able to train a custom model and run it, right? And really, that would be in tune with the sort of Android thesis. And so I hope they don't deviate from that. I hope it's not, this is open, but we have a walled garden around the AI. You got to use this AI because, by the way, then we're going to use it to retrain, and then hence you can't use it in healthcare, and then we can't help people. So, my motivations and my sort of rationale for what I'm saying all gets back to that. If you can't give me the tool to really let me use that to help people, and this is me as a physician talking, let alone a founder, then the tool is worthless. Then you've just kind of taken something amazing and put a fatal flaw in it. So hopefully someone of decision-making capability is watching and listens, because I think that that's a really important thing. And I'll also say, in addition to that, is if you don't do it, someone else will. So it, to me, that is, an opportunity, really.
Yep. Yeah, we'll see how it's pan out, but I'm still optimistic just on the enterprise and healthcare side specifically, because everything, you take our history, the most advanced tech or equipment were adopted or at least accepted pretty quickly from that side. And this is, and everybody will be okay with that if it comes from there, right? Like from enterprise offering them, and it's a solution to a problem, especially health and wellness problem, then it's even going to. So I really don't see it's going to have any impact on that side anyway. It's just that the D2C side works completely different, and the expectations are different too. So it's a different hurdle. But like you said, we'll see probably. I also believe that we will see more. I have a more optimistic view, like you, that we will see more of it coming there, especially
Right.
with the amalgamation of XR and AI together and more accessible things. So we'll see. Now, specific to your startup journey. So I know, building companies is the hardest thing. And were there a moment where you faced, up until now in your journey, the biggest challenge? What was it? Because personally, from my end, I've been part of companies where we were like, 4 weeks runway, and then somehow we got funded and it worked. But I've walked through that phases. And talk to me about your journey.
Yeah. So I guess I don't think there's one point. I think it happens all the time. And what happens is if you do it enough times, you get really good at handling it, right? And you get really good at problem solving. And this is, I think you hit the nail on the head. This is by far the hardest thing I've ever done. And I would say to anyone out there, if you're looking for something hard to do, start a technology company within healthcare and sell to one client. And if you've done that, that's super hard. I mean, you're combining a couple of things that, especially in combination, is incredibly hard, right? And so, and I think, we've been in play for quite some time now. There's been plenty of situations where, there's the sword of Damocles has been hanging right over our head, and we figure it out. And I would say not just me, but our entire team, we've gotten really good at overcoming challenges. I would say if I had to pick one thing, the challenge that we're very good at handling and addressing and overcoming, that is persisted and really, I guess I'm hoping folks will get the message on, is the actual hardware piece, because, it's exactly what we were talking about earlier. And to put a fine point on it, it's, the variety of headsets that are out there are really used in two contexts, right? There's the enterprise context, and then there's the consumer facing context. It's the same hardware, right? And maybe there's some sort of different firmware or whatever, different SDK, etc. But it's the same sort of bare hardware. And I would say that the where we're kind of off in the industry is that the focus really has been maybe 90% consumer and 10% enterprise amongst the folks building and really marketing the hardware, when it should probably be the opposite. And so, there were challenges from early days, very early days, of things that we take for granted. If you were developing a 2D app, it can't be online. Okay. So then, you can make an offline 2D app, but there was really, at the time we started, it was really kind of hard to make a offline extended reality application, right? And then, a whole variety of other things like abrupt, unannounced firmware changes. So then we built an entire mobile device management system that we have in-house. And each time our response really was not to, go find another third-party vendor and pay them to handle this or that. In some situations, it's appropriate where it just makes sense. But we knew that we were in this for the long haul. And so we've built this out in a way that is sustainable for the long haul. And that's really critical, It's the iceberg under the water. People see the iceberg above the water. That's like, the website or the facade, right? The user interface. But particularly in extended reality, the iceberg below the water is massive, right? And in our case is really massive because we've built all these different modules to overcome these common challenges.
It is very hard selling into healthcare, like you said. So what's been the hardest part for you? Is it, just like with your conversations with, is it convincing hospitals? Is it convincing doctors? Or is it convincing patients?
I would say, it's very interesting. I think patients are easy because they benefit from it. If it was just a direct line to the patient, I think that is not our technology. I can speak for us, has some really repeatable, readily demonstrated benefits. And, the sentiment, one very common question, would you recommend this to your peers? It's extremely high. So I don't think that is as much a challenge, which is a good place to be, right?
Yeah.
Because fundamentally, that's an absolute. You have to do that. And that's really our mission as a company. Providers, I would say, most of them, if they give it 5 to 10 minutes to try out, they're on board, because their skepticism usually comes from, and mine too, as a provider, comes from, all right, how much of my time is this going to take? And it's not because I'm not interested. It's because, the sort of production pressure or, sort of top-down approach that unfortunately American healthcare suffers from a little bit now. I do think that there are some ripe opportunities for innovation and opportunity there. But, that is just the way things work, right? And so that's really what's running in the back of their minds. Outside of that, really, if you have their ear and you're able to get over that, usually they're good. Now, the institutional side or the, let's just say the administrative decision maker depends on the institution. It depends on whether the institution wants to be innovative and not just talk about being innovative, because all of them talk about being innovative, right? I mean, it's really, do you have something behind what you're saying, right? Is it a facade or do you really mean it? And the ones that really mean it, it resonates very well. I think that, and you encounter a lot of common questions, especially before you've even sold to anyone. The first question is, who else is buying this? And of course, the sort of clinician in the back of your head is saying, who the heck cares? Who's, like someone's got to be the first, right? And we're going to help no one unless someone, and so, we were very fortunate, that to get over that hurdle relatively early. And really, a lot of that has to do with, in my opinion, being 100% behind it and saying, hey, we're going to make this work. We understand that this is bleeding edge. We're going to do whatever it takes to make sure that you get the value out of it. And, I think having a mutual understanding of that is really critical. And now, fast forward 8 years or so, we're in this position now where we're not talking about, can you try this out? It's more of like, this can really help you with X, Y, or Z outcomes. This can really help you with the business. This can help you see more patients. This can help you expand your geographical area of your institution because you can do more in a remote telehealth context and so on. And so that has all transformed into stuff that I think is now going to follow a typical arc within healthcare technology, which is, a lot of people, it's like, it's not a huge thing. It's not a huge thing. And then all of a sudden, all the hospitals, all the institutions, it's a huge thing. We need it. And I think we're getting very close to that. And really, I think it's the last sort of piece. Some folks will say is insurance reimbursement. I don't think it's as much that, because I think that there's two sides to that coin. The other side to that coin is it can be a shot in the arm for any particular direct to patient effort, sometimes referred to as concierge care, sometimes just referred to as, membership and things like that. But, there's a ton of direct primary care providers, nurse practitioners, physicians, therapists, at-home caregivers, and so forth that really, have done very well. And it's something that's convenient for the patient and really empowers the provider to have a much deeper picture of what's going on for an individual over time compared to, a slice in time encounter once every 6 months. I went and I saw and I got these numbers. This was my blood pressure at that instance. And, a few questions and, you do a physical exam and so on and so forth. Being able to transform that to, number one, you're getting all that information all the time. And number two, actually, it's way more convenient than it was before. So, because you don't have to make an appointment, or maybe you only have to go in person every so often. And so really adding convenience for the patient is going to further engage the patient. And, step one in healthcare is to have the patient show up. If you don't have a patient, you don't have a healthcare system. And so I think all of these things are kind of coming to a head and really, I think, support what we're doing and where we're going.
And typically when you are doing this implementations to, especially to enterprise clients, is it like, what's the time duration? Is it pretty turnkey or it takes a little bit of time?
Yeah. So in terms of the actual solution, we offer a turnkey solution, but the typical time it takes a healthcare organization to engage, to try it out, and then go through their processes, it's about 6 months, and that's not abnormal. Folks that work within, let's just say, medical device sales, for example, somebody's selling, hips or knees or something like that, it's about the same cycle length. And so the good news is that it's somewhat predictable. It's longer than, obviously the consumer facing space and other spaces. But it's predictable and it's following the same time course that it does for other things.
Yeah, it's not that bad. I was trying to understand where it falls in the whole ecosystem of deployments. Then it's a huge challenge always in healthcare. It's like, what, then the last question is always how long it's going to take for deployment and getting it through. Cool. And so how about your customers right now? How are you acquiring them? What has kind of worked and what kind of hasn't worked? And also talk to us a little bit about your traction, how far you've grown, and are you fundraising or are you good? And give us a little bit insights.
Yeah. So how we acquire customers is really, we've had no formal sales team up until very recently. And, we got here, by the way, without taking any outside capital, really through, trying to do our absolute best to deliver everything we can and more. If something is a question, if there's an issue, we're on it. We're not shunting to an automated system. We're not, all of these things that, these sort of little things that everyone can easily say. It's very easy to say and very hard to do in practice, right? Because, there's a money side to this too, but we have felt as though, in terms of support, it's important to have a person on it, and not a link. We have zero hesitation to hop on a call. And that really has led to, I think, a lot of word of mouth. And, we view our clients as, an ongoing relationship. So it's not like we sell, here's your license, goodbye. If somebody has a license and they want X, Y, or Z experience, for example, and this also ties in with the previous statement about that iceberg under the water, is that, we've always made a conscious effort to build that experience, whatever it may be, as long as it's reasonable. Every once in a while, there's something that's flight of ideas, but really, if it serves our overall mission of helping patients and is something within our capability, we do it. And back to that point about the systems to be able to do this, we have systems now that allow us to build experiences very quickly. Even the client can build them very quickly using a web application, for example. So really, that's one illustrative example. Is we haven't had to do formal sales or even a lot of marketing, because and our sort of approach has been focus very deeply on delivering, the best possible thing you can. This is a bleeding edge space. And if it works at all, that's awesome. If it works at all and really moves the needle forward on outcomes, that's where we want to be at the very least. And then on top of that, we want to give great service and we want to be responsive to whatever they're asking for.
So tell us about your little long-term vision. 5 years from now, where do you see Waya going, or where you want it to go?
Yeah, great question. So we'd like to really transform healthcare in a way that is something that empowers providers and patients. So we want to, and transform is obviously a very broad word. And that can come through a whole variety of different things, right? There's a bunch of ways that can happen. And, the one I alluded to earlier is just access, right? Convenient, always available access to a robust assessment or non-pharmacologic treatment tool that's a very powerful thing. And so, that's where we're headed. And, whether we are the sort of, king of the mountain or whether we're a driver of that, I think either one of those is great. And really, I think at the very least we'll be a catalyst. But, I do think that we've stayed true to our mission. We've stayed true to what we've tried to do, which is empower patients and providers. And really, I think, we'll continue on that mission. From a technical standpoint, we're already there in terms of our capability. And, certainly we've taken a blue ocean approach as a company. So we really, there's other folks within our space, ostensibly, if you go online and you look, but really, I don't think that there's anyone doing quite what we're doing. And so that, has pros and cons. One is the con is that there's no cookie cutter path to follow. The pro is that, I think that the rewards are potentially tremendous. And so we really have started everything with sort of a look inside and say, okay, I as a provider, what would I want to be able to do my job better? Okay, I as a patient, what would I want in order to be able to have better care or more convenient care? And then really having those fundamental questions be at the center of everything we do. And that really has served us well.
It hopefully, I'm sure you are the driver of it for sure. We are hoping that you become the king of the mountain. That's my hope. I'm actually very gung-ho about, especially in healthcare. I think there is, like, I also expressed this sentiment that this is where I see the most coming first. Then everybody else will follow, and that's how I still view it. So this is a big opportunity, and I'm pretty sure that you're gonna do well. This has been great, but before I end today's conversation, I have a fun question, which is kind of how I end every episode with my guests. So the question is, tell us about a personal thing that no one in your professional circles know at this moment, but this is your chance to tell them, and could be anything that you feel is appropriate to share. And but this is your chance.
I guess I would say, well, I'll it's a little bit of trivia, but I'm very good at name that tune. The way my brain works, I don't know. I'm very good at carrying a tune and naming a tune. I have no sort of natural voice talent. I can't sing at all. But the way my mind works, I can definitely, carry a tune and name a tune really with the lowest number of notes. It's kind of a little thing that we do like when we're on road trips and stuff. And I'm very good at it, provided that it's in my sort of catalog, in my brain. If I haven't been exposed to it before, no. But that's I don't think many people know that about me.
How fast? Like literally, like is it like?
Well, okay, so the sort of traditional name that tune is actually they give you a hint and they start to play the song. So sometimes if it's like that, then I already know based off the hint. But that's aside from, I think, the core of what I'm getting at. But usually, within a couple of bars, I can get it. Yeah.
This is fascinating. Thanks for sharing. I appreciate it. Before we conclude today's conversation, couple of items. One, I know that you are about to come out with a book. So can you give us a brief details about it, when it's coming out, how people can find it if they want to, and also where people can connect with you if they want to?
Yeah, thank you. So the book is called Convergent Health, and it's really focused on the different data streams that one can collect about oneself, what they're useful for, and really how to actually convert that information into something actionable that can actually improve your health. And there's a website available. It's health-convergence.com, and it is set to be released here within the next month or so, and will be available on Amazon. And really, I hope that it helps people, especially during this sort of AI explosion, really make sense of what data they can collect for what issue, and then how they can actually convert that into something that will actually bring about meaningful, positive change for their health.
Fascinating. And we will put in our show notes, wherever you get it, you will see in the description the link to the book's website where you can enter your information and keep in, when it's releasing. And last thing, where people can connect with you directly, Dr. Morgan.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, our company website is wayahealth.com, WAYA, and then the word health.com, all one word. And you can email me directly. I'm happy to field any emails I can. It's jmorgan@wayahealth.com. I'd love to hear from you.
All right. Thank you once again. Appreciate your time. We will put all this information in our show notes as well. And this has been great. Thank you for sharing your insights.
Thank you so much. This has been wonderful.